Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Trisha. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the Finding the Magic podcast. We're with Sally Barilla, right?
Yes.
You can say it much better than I can. I can't roll my R's, but I'm so excited to have you here. I was on your podcast recently, or it's going to air semi-recently. And I'm so excited to learn about your book. So you have a psychological thriller, correct?
Yes, I do.
And it's called The Doctor. Combination of love, hatred, and revenge is served.
Yeah, it's completely. And it's a mouthful, but it's my first book, but not the last.
Oh, good. Well, dive in. How did you decide to write a thriller, and what is this about? And I need all the deets.
Absolutely. So I want to say just loved writing ever since I was a kid. I think, coming from school and I did not learn English until I think I was about maybe 4 years old. So my teachers would basically help me just learn English through reading books, short stories, novels. And I think I just fell in love with the creativity and the imagination that comes from a book. And then the more that I started reading, I honestly just loved, mystery novels. I loved Agatha Christie. I started reading more Stephen King, James Patterson, and I just started really just finding myself obsessed with true crime and thrillers. And when I started watching, Lifetime movies, I thought, okay, this is really incredible. Just the drama that goes into these things, the dynamics. And it was all fiction, but I actually had a dream where I was a private detective and I was in search of something. And the more that I remember that dream, it was basically like, oh, I'm a detective, but I'm searching for revenge. I want to hurt a doctor. And it was just a random doctor. And then I thought, okay, we can definitely take this somewhere. And I first started writing my book when I was 20 in college. It was through a creative writing assignment. And I remember the prompt basically, oh, if you could picture yourself as another version of yourself, but the complete opposite, how would it be? And I thought, okay, I think I like to think of myself as cheery, positive, but maybe if I wasn't that version of myself, how would it be? And then I just started playing around with it.
That's really neat. Yeah. I have a science background, so I've taken classes since I began my fiction journey. But yeah, always think it's so cool that like you got a chance to learn how to do characters, how to do plot, how to set things up. Because I feel like mystery and psychological thrillers are like the hardest thing to write.
Yeah. I
'Cause
feel it's just super interesting because I definitely want to learn how to keep up with the drama, but without going too overkill. So I think, what really helped me interest this is like reading Stephen King's On Writing book. It's like, okay, how to just really make the drama flow easily, and then writing several revisions until I was finally satisfied. It was so funny that process.
So tell us about it. So you've told us a little bit about the book, but tell us about the main characters, what's going on with them, and maybe a little bit about where they're going to go.
Absolutely. So my main character, Detective Sasha Thomas, is basically a woman who she she's basically a woman who suffered a lot of hardships, a lot of trauma, grew up in foster care, the complete opposite of me, basically. But the more that I got to learn her story, I realized that we're actually not that distinct in character. I feel like, Detective Sasha Thomas, she's basically me, but she's a version of somebody that I wanted to be. She's what one could say, pardon the language, a badass, somebody who could defend herself, somebody, who is not afraid to just basically stand up and say, oh, if I don't like something, I'm going to express it. And I found it really interesting just to be like a different character, but somebody who I portrayed as much stronger, so much more characteristic, charismatic. not so introverted as I would be. And the other main character, I guess you could say, our antagonist is Dr. Jonathan Morgan. And it was really interesting because I basically made him the villain of my book, but I think in a way, throughout the whole story, he sort of helps Sasha realize that revenge is not the answer. Because basically, the whole premise is Sasha discovers that her son was murdered by Dr. Morgan through his chemotherapy treatments. And she basically goes on this whole journey of just pure revenge. She's out for blood. But then I think throughout the whole story, she just starts to really ponder whether or not revenge is going to help her heal or just forgiveness. And I kind of wanted to bring that lesson into life and thinking, we've all had somebody that we love. We've all had somebody who may have been harmed or somebody who we wish we could have helped in so many different ways. And I thought, if you had someone you loved and you found out that they were, God forbid, murdered or injured by someone that you thought that you could trust, how would you respond with that? And then I really just wanted to have my character remember that sometimes fighting fire with fire, well, pretty much all the time, it gets you nowhere. And then just remembering that sometimes, even if people don't ask you for forgiveness, sometimes the best thing that you can do is just forgive them because it just darkens your heart. And I really wanted to bring that message to my character.
Yeah, I mean, having a loss like the loss of a child, I can't even imagine. And I'm sure like, yeah, some of that is like grief talking, right? It's like, what do you do with that grief? That grief feels horrible. So let's channel it into something else, into an action, into anger, into something else that's gonna get me through like feeling the pain, or get me around feeling the pain
Yeah.
in some aspects. It's interesting that you said that about the chemo because I was just watching the show The Resident on Netflix. Have you ever seen that?
It sounds familiar. It actually sounds a little familiar. I think I was watching or maybe heard something the other day with my dad. I'm not too sure, but because he basically will just skim through channels, so I can't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
anyway, so yeah, it popped up on, I started watching and it's kind of a typical medical show, but one of the storylines is that one of the doctors is like treating patients that don't even have cancer with chemotherapy to get cure patients for her research, right? So like she looks better and cure them, but also charge them for the chemo drugs that they didn't even need in the first place. So that was just one of their storylines. So that's why it's
That sounds like a plot scene in Grey's Anatomy.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, all these is like they're kind of predictable because there's only so many different plot stories you can go with like medical drama. But anyway, it's fun enough to watch on the treadmill.
Oh,
So
and that's actually something great because maybe it gives you inspiration to write with your stories.
yeah. Anyway, I thought I was just it was just interesting the similar like storyline there. How
Good.
long did you take to write your novel?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, it definitely was a process because I've always known that I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know if I wanted to write a psychological thriller novel or maybe a biography or maybe even a cookbook, even though I'm not that much of a chef. But I knew that I wanted to write a book one day, but I wasn't exactly sure what the genre was going to be. But then the more that I started really just loving murder mystery, and I was obsessed, with Agatha Christie, Stephen King, and I was reading more of those stories, and I thought, how do I write something that is like keeping the reader on their toes, waiting to see what happens next? And when it was a creative writing prompt in class, I remember in college, it was really just super interesting. It was actually very thought-provoking that if I could picture myself as another version of myself, someone who looks like me but is not exactly the same, how would that character be? And like I said, I started first writing my book when I was 20 and I loved it. But when it was during the pandemic that because I was, studying and working at the same time, I actually had to put it aside because I was just so swamped. But when the pandemic actually, started, coming into effect in New York, as you know, everything was shut down and being remote, I actually decided to take the time to sit down and write. And then I thought, I probably am just gonna feel like this is a hobby. I'm not gonna get anything done with it. But no, I motivated myself to just write every single day as much as I could, even if it was for 5 to 10 minutes. I really can't go anywhere. I'm working from home. I'm studying from home. Let's just find a way to do this. And a friend of mine from LinkedIn actually told me about a publishing press called New Degree Press, and it was a self-publishing company, and she had just published her book. And I thought, okay, let's see what the opportunities are. And I got more motivated to write the book because I thought, even if I have to pay for it, I still want to be able to publish it. It may not be a bestseller, but I still want to be able to publish a book. And it was all worth it because I managed to become the first person in my family ever to publish a book. And I got to do it at 23 years old. And it was just such an amazing feeling, you know. I didn't know when I was going to be able to write a book. I didn't know how much I was going to spend to write a book. I didn't know if it hit bestseller list or maybe not, but there was nothing worthwhile than just having that book in my hands and knowing I did it. I finally published a book, and oh my God, I think I just fell in love more with writing at that point.
I was gonna say that's what happened to me. Like I really hadn't thought that I would publish my first book, and then I did it. Then I missed writing, and I needed to write more, and so it just snowballed from there. So, well,
It's
kudos to
actually
you for doing that, like while you're going to school and while you're working too. I mean, when I was going to school and working, like I didn't have any extra time, and all the books I couldn't even read because I was just reading my school textbooks all the time. So,
I
double
know.
kudos.
I think I honestly I was an English major in college, basically an English honors major, but specializing in creative writing. So I literally had to read so many different books. And then it definitely my writing journey was put on a little bit of a strain, I will say, because when I tell you it was a little bit of a struggle because I was working full time. I was also an intern at Penguin Random House. I was interning, I was working, I was studying. I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to put my writing journey on hold for them. And then when the pandemic hit, I thought, okay, how many times am I gonna be able to have an opportunity to just sit down and write and just see what happens there? And I thought, okay, just do it, just do it, and you never know what opportunities may happen. And it just felt like something so motivating, like I had something to wake up to. I had something to continue writing the next story. I didn't even know where my journey was going to lead me. I didn't know what the story was going to end up with. I didn't know if I'm going to be able to, I don't know. I just wanted to see where this book would take me.
That's so fun. Yeah. That's such a neat story. So so do you work in the book industry now?
I wish, but I actually work for a social work company in New York City, and it definitely is something, it's not related to the book publishing process, but it is something that I appreciate because I'm able to help people. I'm able to help a group of people, you know, no matter what their struggles are, and just like see situations and help make it better, coming together, working with the team. I will say one day the dream goal is to one day work in publishing, but I'm never going to give up because I believe, no matter how early or how late a process may be, your dreams are never impossible. They may take a little bit of work, but I like to think it will happen.
Well, I'm thinking the social working job is going to give you a lot of story ideas for those thrillers coming up.
Maybe I would. It's just I have to be careful because obviously what says in the office, you obviously can't repeat it. But I would say, you know, I can definitely see about ways of try to do it safely, but also making sure that, no confidentiality laws are broken. But I would say it definitely gives me something to wake up to, learning how to really be like Detective Sasha Thomas, really learning how to help people, and also getting a little bit of enjoyment out of it.
Well, and learning about human nature and all those type psychological things. So yeah.
Exactly.
So are you working on anything now?
So that's a great question. I'm actually working on my second book, but it's actually not a psychological thriller novel at all. It's actually a memoir of my dad's book. Basically, my dad and I have been working together because he asked me to write my second book about his immigration story when he came to America. And I mean, I'd always known about, how he immigrated from here. basically from Ecuador to America, and then just learning how that process was, and eventually making a family here, reuniting with my grandmother here. But it's super interesting. I'm currently working on that. And when I tell you, I have so many people for my dad's friends on WhatsApp. They're reaching out to me. Okay, when I was with your father in 1987, I went here, I did this. Like, I have so many people going off my phone sometimes because they all want to be involved in the story, but it's so fun. It's so cool. And it's basically he's saying it, he's writing, I'm typing it, and he's just saying it with all with his words.
Wow, that's a neat experience to be able to have with your dad. What a bonding. Yeah, that would be really
It
neat.
was. It definitely took a little bit of convincing on my part because I wasn't sure. Like, at first, the story was looking to be more of a short story than a full-on book. And then the more that I thought about it, my book, it wasn't a complete failure, my first book, but, it definitely didn't get as many eyes as I would have wanted it to. And it had somebody gave it a 1 star on Goodreads, only one star. And then I thought, oh my gosh, do I feel like I'm strong enough to publish a book about my dad? And then, if people don't really like it, critiques are definitely not my strong suit. But my dad actually brought this really great quote, if you live your life based on what others think of you or what others expect of you, then you're not really living. And it definitely super interesting. We're currently working on it together. I don't know when I'll get it published, but I promised him I will, and I'm gonna do it.
Fun. Well, yeah, and don't look at those reviews because that just wasn't their book. I mean, there are readers for every book, I think. And
Yeah,
so yeah, that's yeah, the whole yeah, publishing marketing, that's a whole nother thing.
absolutely. It's definitely a whole nother ballpark, but it's definitely super interesting. And it's funny because when I was an intern back at Penguin Random House, I was an editorial intern for Putnam and Razorbill, two different imprints. I actually learned that the publishing process is a lot more complex than we think. Looking at manuscripts, looking at something that can really stand out to you, really looking at something that could help the story flowing easier. It's definitely super interesting and it motivates me more to just want to create the best of my abilities. And knowing that I have the potential to do that, my first book, I know is my first one, but now that it's my dad's story, it's just so interesting to see like the different levels that I can take it. And in a way, it's like we're sort of working together. And I told him, we don't know how long we'll have on this earth, but at least I'll be able to have this book and future generations can read it, our relatives can read it and know that this is our family, this is our legacy. And it's just super interesting to see how the world of writing can take us all.
Yeah, that's a neat book because yeah, like you said, future generations will always have that and have that history. So
Exactly. And I find that's one of the most beautiful things about writing. Whether you love psychological thriller novels, memoirs, cookbooks, or manga, I think anime stories, everybody will find the genre that works for them, that's suitable for them, and maybe it can inspire them to follow their own goals. And I know because I actually have a podcast myself, as you and I both know, Trisha. I get to meet so many different authors just like yourself, and they get to explain to me, their writing journeys, their backgrounds, their motivations, and it's so inspiring to see like how many people were able to juggle being full-time parents or full-time, working wherever they were doing, traveling and being able to accomplish so many things. And it's so admirable just to see like from so many authors like yourself, just how your writing journeys have taken you. And I actually inspired to be like that one day.
yeah, yeah. Well, and tell us the name of your podcast because that was going to be my next question, so we can plug your podcast as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my podcast is called Detective Writer, and you can actually find me on detectivewriter.com.
Great, thank you. And yeah, because I started my podcast during the pandemic just because I miss my author friends. And I thought, well, if I do a podcast and I talk to my author friends about their books, then we can share them with the world. And that's like a win-win for everyone. So
Exactly. And I've actually started my podcast, I think maybe around 2021. I can't even remember at this time. but we're currently on season 6, and I think your episode comes out next week. So I'm sharing it with you soon. And it's super interesting because my book isn't only for authors, it also is a mix of true crime. So I love researching, unsolved crimes, whether they're mis unsolved mysteries, unsolved murders. And it's sort of my hope that one day we can gather enough clues about so many things have happened, that so many crimes that have yet to be solved, and maybe provide justice to victims and their families. And then I also, at first, I was just researching horror story after horror story that I thought I need to just like talk about something positive. So then Detective Writer was born. I can have talk about my writing journey, have other people come in and talking about writing journeys. So it's a mix of true crime, my podcast, while also talking about writing journeys. And then my guests aren't only authors. I welcome anybody because I just love having conversations. But oh my gosh, I think I freaked myself out way too much in the beginning. Just reading horror stories, somebody did this and something did that, and the images I would see, I think I needed to look at something positive
Yeah,
at
I
some
cannot
point.
I cannot read horror at all. And sometimes even psychological thriller crosses the line for me. It seems like yours is pretty safe, but don't give it away if it's not.
But actually, it was interesting that you say that because I initially wanted to go full out gory with my story, but because I was working with a publishing press, they did have a limit or certain restrictions. So you couldn't go too gory, no erotica. You also cannot reference very strong drug uses or be very descriptive with certain things. And then I thought that's actually okay because I just want to see how this first book goes. I didn't want to just make it completely like unreadable for teens. But I would say, yeah, it was a better option to just like be not too gory, but maybe just like say, okay, it happened, but I don't have to go into descriptions.
Right. Well, and if the premise of the story is about her journey of forgiveness and acceptance and her getting over her grief, then I'm not sure that you need like a hack
Yeah.
scene.
And then actually, it's funny because my dad actually said, "Oh, are you sure you're never gonna write like a book that's just like does make you bone chilling?" I thought, I don't know. We're writing your book now. Do you have anything bone chilling to mention? Absolutely not.
Any skeletons in the closet?
Not that I know of, but it's just like it's a whole different ballpark this time because the first book, it was all from my ideas, it was all from my motivations, but I definitely just want to be careful because this time around it's things that actually happen. It's people who actually want to be in this story and tell me, okay, this and that happened. There's so many stories to juggle, and it's so funny this time
Yeah,
around.
and it's his voice too. Like you want to kind of capture that person's voice.
Actually, especially because he's literally talking as I'm typing this. So I want to make sure that, I do the man justice. And then it's so funny because my mom doesn't really think, oh, it's just a book. It's not really gonna happen. I said, oh, you just wait. I will make this work. I took 3 years to publish. I will do it again if I have to.
Yeah, I can tell that you're that person that's going to get things done. So I have no doubt about that.
I think it's the New Yorker in me. I have this mindset that I don't want to give up so easily. I'm not the best person when it comes to getting out of my comfort zone, but I know that I've always had a goal to want to be an author and I've been able to do it. I know that I want to make my family proud and I want to do it. And I want to basically just I don't know how long I have to live, but I want to be able to live it the best way that I can and continue knowing that no matter what happens, I'm proud of being able to know that I don't want to give up unless I've tried at least once.
That's a really cool message. But okay, so if you do like thrillers and horrors, you're gonna love one of my guests who's coming up. JD Barker was on my show,
Ooh.
and he writes, well, he used to be a ghostwriter for James Patterson, Dean Koontz. But now he writes with them, and he has this novel coming out it's based on he lives in the New England, I think on an island or something like that. Um, anyway, in Massachusetts, off the coast of Massachusetts. But he said there's like this house, like that he can see from his house that has always been, nobody's lived in it for forever. And there's all of these stories and ghost stories about the house being haunted. And so he wrote a book about that house, and you can enter a giveaway to win a night to sleep in the house. Isn't that freaky? But yeah, so and he like he knows Dean Koontz. All these huge authors he writes with, I was like, oh, thank you. I was fangirling totally because I was so excited. But he also, like, the Bram Stoker's family had him write like the Dracula backstory that Bram Stoker had originally written. It was very cool. So, and of course, I'm a major vampire person. So yeah, so check that one out when it comes out in a couple of weeks.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Yeah, and the link to the giveaway is there. So if you want to spend a night in a haunted house, then that would be it.
Maybe because I don't even like doing haunted houses during Halloween.
Oh.
I am the kind of person that, oh my God, if I have to do a jump scare, I'd rather have a jump scare in dignity. I know that makes no sense, but it's like, oh my God. I think because we live in the day and age of cameras, I don't want to end up on someone's Instagram or TikTok as the lady who screamed nonstop. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I guess that's always it could be a problem or an issue. My light.
I know, but I actually just find it super interesting. And hey, maybe get out of my comfort zone. Give me something to travel to.
There you go. And maybe you can take a friend with you that will help you not be so scared.
I definitely will. I definitely will because I don't know what it is. I can watch I think a horror film. I can watch a horror movie, but only in the daytime. I'm not a big fan of watching anything past 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. and in total darkness. And I know the whole thing is to watch, in total darkness, what the scariest lights happen. As much as I love murder mystery, I need to sleep and I won't be able to sleep. So it's not fun for me.
That's interesting that you like that, but then yeah. So I
know I don't even make sense myself, but it's just I don't know what's happened. It's just I think I've just started realizing that I am okay researching, learning how to keep people safe, learning on how to bring justice for victims and helping us prevent, future crimes in the future. But I think, anything for just completely just oh my God, so something so terrifying. I don't think I can do it. I'm a total coward. I'm a total coward.
Well, we will be excited with your memoir coming out. Tell everyone where they can find you and your book, The Doctor.
Absolutely. So you can always find me on my website, Detective Writer. That's www.detectivewriter.com. And you can also find my book, my blog, my podcast, and my socials are all there.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's honestly so great to be able to talk to you again, Trisha. And I will actually send you over the links soon when your episode comes out. So I honestly hope to have you back soon. I hope to come back here.
Great. Of course. Yes. When your next book comes, we'll definitely have you back.
Absolutely. Stay tuned when it comes out, but it will.
Good.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Congratulations. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.